You're listening to Worshipology with Kurtis Parks, a biblical, practical, and spiritual conversation about living and leading worship. Let's lean into today's episode.
Well, hey, thanks for tuning in to Worshipology this week. I'm pumped because on the other end of the phone, we've got not just a worship leader, not just a songwriter, but a producer, and more than all of his gifts, I just love this guy's heart. Y'all say what's up to Chris Clayton.
Hey, man, how you doing?
Dude, I'm doing so good, and I made sure you're in Nashville today because it's kind of like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego with Chris Clayton? You are all over the place, bro.
Well, it's been a busy season. Actually fly out Sunday night to go back to Texas to write. So yeah, it's just kind of been all over the place, but I'm grateful to be home for a minute. That's for sure.
Man, I'm excited to dive into a bunch of different things. But first off, man, for those who are listening and may not be familiar with you or your story, just share a snapshot of kind of who you are and where you got to this place as you're in the Nashville area producing and writing. Man, yeah, just give us that overview, bro.
For sure. Yeah. So born and raised Texan.
Nice.
I'm a pastor's kid, so kind of moved around a little bit, but I claim Texas is home, always will be. Married my college sweetheart of 22 years. Her name's Kara, and we have 5 kids. And it's fun. It's a fun season right now. So I have 4 boys and a little girl. My oldest son is 19. So we actually have an adult child now, which is weird to say out loud still, Kurtis. It's so weird to say out loud, but he's paving his own way. He's actually into music as well, but on the other end, he's on the road crew side of things. He's actually out.
That's right, because Big Daddy Weave was just up here.
That's right. Yeah. And so he's out with Big Daddy Weave right now. It's part of their crew, and loving life doing that. So. And then I have another senior graduating in just a couple of weeks, like in May. It was just crazy to think. So I'll have 2 adult children, which is still like, help me, Kurtis. Pray for me, man. This is crazy.
Hey, mine are 10 and 8, and I can't even imagine like getting to the teenage years. So you're killing it right now,
but
bro.
You know what? It's awesome. Like it's got its challenges, as every teenager gives their challenges, but it's the most fun, rewarding time to see them, kind of just blossom and find their bent and how they're, where they want to do in life and what the Lord's calling them to. And it's just really fun to do that. So yeah, so he's graduating in May. I've got a 16-year-old, it's a sophomore. Again, I got a freshman who's 14, and then bring in baby girl. She's 4. Cambry's 4, and
love it.
We adopted her 4 years ago, and she is just the queen bee of the house next to my wife, and got me wrapped around my finger. But it's fun. It's a fun season. So we've been in Dallas like for most of our marriage. For the first 16, we got married, went to Dallas Baptist University up there, and graduated in 2000. And then Kara and I got married, and then we basically just started ministry. Like we started in really a couple of different avenues and lanes. I started traveling as a worship leader. I started leading worship in college, and really in high school. I started leading my youth group, and that's kind of where I got the bug. And my youth pastor was kind of really supportive of helping shepherd me as a young worship leader, as a young worship pastor, even at that age, of what it meant to pastor people of my own age. And I went on to college, and then like I said, I started traveling, leading worship all over the country, kind of doing camps and conferences. And
now, did you focus on worship ministry as part of your college degree?
Ironically, not. So the ultimate goal was to go to Dallas Baptist University for just a couple of years. Then I wanted to transfer to Belmont out here in Nashville and to pursue music business. And then I met this girl who's now my wife. And so I decided to stick around in Dallas.
It's always about a girl, man.
I know, man. And it was well worth it for sure. So, but no, I ended up staying there, and I have a marketing undergrad. But if you fast forward a good 15 years, I actually went back and got my master's degree in worship leadership from DBU as well.
Cool.
So shout out to them on that. Just a great program out there. But no, so we, like I said, traveled for a while. All the while, I'd had this bug in me that I really kind of felt like the Lord was calling me to kind of a dual calling of leading the local church, whether that was going to be in a staff role or on the itinerant side of things. and also in the side of production and songwriting. And I just felt like that was what the Lord was just kind of giving me a passion about, and kind of tooling me for just in my, even in like, I remember just pretty distinctly in my 10th grade year of high school, like the Lord just kind of dropping this on me. And I didn't really know what to do with it, as a 10th grader, but I had great people around me in my community with my student pastor and church that helped me kind of navigate that. And I ended up connecting with a guy by the name of David Parker, who was a producer for a long time in Dallas, and he became my mentor. He became a mentor for me, both in the worship leading side and on the production side, because he did that. He traveled, led worship, was serving in the local church, but he also had a studio in the Dallas area and produced mainly worship stuff and wrote that. And so it was a gift, man, just to have that. And I loved our kind of Paul and Timothy relationship that we had. It was just like he was kind of showing me the ropes.
Well, hey, let me pause you there, because you just mentioned that Paul and Timothy relationship, and I think it is so amazing that you found a mentor who did exactly what you felt like you were being called to. I love that, a dual calling with production and songwriting and then worship leading. What did that practically look like as you guys were, mentor and mentee, kind of a protege relationship thing? What did that practically look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. Really a couple of ways, because like I said, with the dual kind of influence and mentorship, really two different angles. One, as someone who, from a worship leading side of things, probably the greatest gift I ever had of someone who felt like he was being called to travel and lead worship for different events, is I got to travel with David for a good 2 or 3 years as in his band and get to watch him lead.
Oh, nice.
And I was just part of his band, played guitar. Sometimes I played percussion in his band, just kind of depending on the event. And I went with him for a good amount of events over the 2 or 3 years. And so I kind of got a front row seat, if you will, to, like I said, not only the ministry side of it, but also the logistical side of it. He taught me how to do booking, how to do, how to do relationships with youth pastors and in churches and things like that. And so just gleaned a lot. And then I would say on the studio side, I was there at his studio every day. I was just kind of his right-hand guy. I did kind of the studio manager stuff. So I got not only just the audio side of things, I got kind of the inner workings of budget building and how to relationships with players and all the admin boring task of what we do as creatives. But I'm so thankful I got to see that and learn from him. And of course I've adapted that to me now over the years, but it was just a great foundation. And man, he was just so open-handed and freely giving of all that. And I've wanted to carry that same kind of mentality with those that I come in contact who are young producers, young worship leaders, and that's kind of what drives me to do what I do today.
Wow. Now, let me ask you this, because obviously you just mentioned it, you kind of that pay it forward mentality. How do you, on the flip side of that, now you're the mentor, now you're the guy that's kind of taking on that coach role. What does that practically look like as, say I'm a young producer or a young songwriter, even a young worship leader, and I'm like, hey, Chris, teach me the ropes. What does that look like?
Yeah. From a worship side of the coin, like here at Gateway, where I'm on staff at as worship pastor, like we have a residency program, and it's really small. We have one resident on staff right now, and she grew up in this church, and she just has got a heart for worship, and she's doing her master's degree in worship. And so when she told me she was doing her academic studies, if you will, I really I went to my pastors like, let's give her some practical things too. Let's just not let it be just book knowledge. Book knowledge is great. I think you need to know doctrine and all that stuff. That's very, very important, obviously. But I wanted to give her a place where she could put some tangible things to practice, And so like she leads once a month for me here in our main services, and then she heads up our student ministry worship. She's part of songwriting here as well. And so just I love giving her feedback. Like the other day, I even gave her feedback during rehearsal. I'm like, hey, maybe we should try to do this. You should think about this. I let her lead. I let her make decisions, but I'm quick to just speak into things, and we just have a great kind of ongoing relationship. She'll throw me songs that she's interested in, or throw me her set list, and I'll kind of critique that a little bit and say, hey, have you thought about this? Or affirm her saying, hey, this is a great set list. So that's on the worship side. On the production side and songwriting, really it happens kind of twofold. One, I've had some interns over the years. One that is actually here in Nashville now, who's doing a great job at production. So it's kind of proud dad moment, if you will, spiritual father, seeing a guy who just really is blooming and taking off. And then I've had, some that are just kind of figuring it out still. And it's been fun to watch from afar, or, have them, invite them into the room and kind of go over production related things and see that. And then songwriting a lot, I write with a lot of young songwriters sometimes, and it's fun for me to just sit down with them and kind of help kind of navigate very gently with white gloves sometimes kind of their ideas, and just kind of help and show them, hey, have you thought about this? Have you, here's an idea we could chase, and just to see their eyes light up when they kind of see it unlock for them is always rewarding.
What's interesting is I've had the chance to write with you a couple of times now, once with a veteran writer and once with a younger writer. Yeah. And I will say that about you, you have a great way of just drawing out potential. And, one of the things that's so important, I think, in a songwriting session, especially co-writing when you're writing with somebody else, is not to be so quick to smash ideas. We actually just did a songwriting clinic at our church Destination up here in Richmond. And, there's, 20, 25 people there, and we split into 5 rooms, and there was some that had never written before, most had never co-written before. And I just said this language piece, and I think I actually kind of stole this from you, where it's like, hey, I think there's something better. It's not like you pitch out an idea and it's like, I don't know if that's the greatest idea for this chorus, but instead of saying, oh, that idea sucks, it's just like, I think there's something better. And, you're leading worship, you're writing songs, you're producing. So oftentimes you're in a room with creatives, and sometimes we have a little bit of a heightened sensitivity because these are ideas that we care about. Some of them, maybe we hold on to a little bit too tightly. How do you nurture and foster an environment where it is all about just getting the best idea out of the room? Because I know, you're producing and you're flying all over the place. There could be some churches that have done 7 records and you're their 8th, or there could be some churches where this is their very first time doing a single or an EP. And so I know you've got that coach hat on all the time. How do you approach, let's just go into this. Like, how do you approach producing an album for a church? What's that take that you come in with?
Yeah, well, I would say just something you said earlier real quick, and I'll get into that. Like, I often joke that every producer should take a class in psychology, because you're dealing with people so much.
So true.
Just different temperaments, and especially with creatives, man. When you get into the creative world, you're dealing with people who are insecure, and I'm one of those. You're one of those. Everybody's insecure to some degree who's a creative, and so learning how to really be more of a teacher and less of a dictator in the room is really the key to working with creatives. And like Chrissy Nordoff, our friend Chrissy, she's probably told you, she's a great, one of her great points in her book that she's written on worship writing is, don't use the word no should never be said, and it's really just like, maybe that's not it. Like no can be such a shutting down word in the writing room and in the production realm. Sometimes the word is no, but it's getting to that no that maybe has to take a journey with the other writer or the artist or whatever, the church that's involved. Good. And so again, you're especially in our world, we're pastoring these people. Production is as much a pastoring role to me as getting up on a platform on a Sunday morning and leading songs. So as far as like the approach, man, I feel like this is my week as a producer and songwriter is never different. The approach is always unique, and that's kind of the fun part that keeps me wanting to keep doing it, honestly. Because you're right, there's some churches that I've worked with that have done records in the past. They have a songwriting culture established, and I'm just kind of folding into it. And they brought me on to say, hey, how can you take what we've started and make it better, or how can you help make it stronger, or how can you help us mature? And that's not necessarily mean better, because sometimes it's great when I walk in, but how can we mature in this process? And like you said, there's some where they're like, hey, we've got 5 songs and we want to do a record. And I'm like, well, we need to go write 15 more,
Exactly.
And so it's just like helping them understand there is a process. And so, for me, it's really sitting down first and foremost. I love, I'll back up and say, my favorite records to produce are church records, because I feel like, ultimately they have a ready-made audience for the songs that we're producing, and that's the people of the church. And they're, I always tell churches, this is not an artist thing. You're creating a resource for your church. It's an invaluable resource that you're investing your time and your energy and your finances into your people. Good. Just like you would do Sunday school curriculum or small group curriculum. This is part of a resource to help disciple your people. And and so I love sitting down with them and catching the vision, just really getting to know them, like just personality wise, before we ever write a song or before we ever talk about hitting the red button. It's like, hey, let's just make sure we're a fit, and just, from a like-minded of your goals, what I can bring to the table. And that's an important step for me. I just did that with a church out in Mississippi. Like I went to go write, but man, we spent more time just hanging out and kind of just getting a vibe for each other and building that relationship so that I can build trust with those people, so that when I do have the hard conversations about songs or production direction or vision, that they're not seeing me just as the guy who's walking in just to change their, whole perspective, but someone that they can partner with. It's more of a partnership for me. And so, and then, for there, just to give you the quick, it's just, it's going through songs. Songs are such the important driver, if not the important driver of the whole record. It's like, if we got to get the songs right, and because again, we're putting these songs in the hands of our people that we're discipling and pastoring every week. And I always joke with my pastor here at Gateway. I was like, they're not gonna really remember your song, your pastor. They're not only gonna remember your sermon, Charlie, but they're gonna remember a 4-minute song. And so I call it. I heard this phrase years ago called portable doxology, and or portable theology, and it's really the doxology that we carry out is language that they're going to carry out with them in their cars and their earbuds, and we want to make sure we're putting great songs and great truth into their ears, into their heart every week. So, the bottom line, the most important part of that whole process is just relationship and building that with them and trust, so that I can do what I'm called to do, and then they walk away with an incredible project and great songs that are going to minister to their people.
That's so good, man. So let's say you're sitting down with a room. You got 4 or 5 worship leaders from a church there. They're presenting, you've probably listened to 20 to 25 songs. The record maybe has 9 to 10. What is that whittling process like? You said you've got to find the right songs. How do you find the right song? Is it melody? Is it lyric? Is it singability? What do you take into those factors as the producer of the album?
Yeah. So it's funny. You just asked this. I just sat down yesterday, with the church that I'm doing a record with in the fall, and kind of started going through their songs. I went out to Mississippi. We wrote for a little bit, but they turned in a good amount of songs that before that writing camp, and they sent them all to me in a Dropbox folder. And I talked with their worship pastor and kind of their executive worship pastor who's kind of heading this up, and said, hey, let's sit down and individually and go through the Dropbox folder, which usually contains a work tape or a demo and the lyric sheet. I love having the lyrics in front of me when I look at songs, so I can just kind of read along with it and make sure I understand what they're saying. I said, let's individually go through that, and let's meet together, which we're going to be doing in a couple weeks, and let's just talk about kind of our gut reactions. And no one's wrong or right, but let's just kind of see what consensus we come to on this. And so, yesterday, I literally sat down for a couple hours and I just listened to every song, sometimes a couple times through, reading lyrics. And so for me, I'm checking really 3 things. I'm checking lyric. I'm checking that for just does it flow well? Is there good cadence? Is there good meter? Does it feel natural? Does it not feel clunky? Does it feel good to sing? Are there any kind of words or phrases that maybe we could push into and dig a little bit deeper that may have been oversaid, before in worship song, but how else could we say that? And sometimes that may not always be the case. Sometimes holy, holy, holy is the only way to say holy, 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 And so then I look at it from a theology side of it too, going, hey, is this accurate? Is this true? And I always encourage churches, hey, take this to your pastor or to a pastor that you trust and run it by them, because as creatives, we can get very poetic, and I love that. But sometimes that can kind of twist the doctrine on it a little bit, and not knowing what we're doing that. And so it's good to have an outside trusted, pastor to read those lyrics, hear those songs. And of course, melody wise, I'm going, hey, does this lift in the right places? Does this settle in the right places? Does this move me emotionally? Because I'll stop right there for a minute, because sometimes emotion in worship can be seen as a bad thing, but I see and I see the point of it. But man, I really feel like if God created music, He created emotion too, and I feel
Absolutely.
like music was created to evoke emotion in us as worshipers. It's when we have an unhealthy balance of emotion and the music that we can get ourselves in trouble. But when I think about the holiness of God, and that the fact that the angels are surrounding the throne even in this moment singing holy, 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 that should evoke some grand emotion in me, going, I get to be a part of that song and joining in the angels right now. And so I feel like that's part of it. And so yeah, those are really the three things I look for. And then it's a matter of just sitting down with them and going, hey, I know these are your babies, but here's some honest feedback, because they're really paying me to be honest with them. They brought me onto the team to be honest, and they'll tell me, please be honest. And I go, well, I hope you understand what you're asking, because sometimes I'm gonna be brutally honest, going, hey, this song just doesn't need to be a part of this project. It's not really worth tweaking. And there's some songs that I go, hey, let's go back and let's maybe look at that chorus again. Let's look at the melody of it or the lyric. And then some are like, hey, this is really good. Let's just put it in the yes pile. Let's move on. Like let's not even mess with it. It's ready to roll. Yeah. So, and that's just a normal part of the process of record making, whether you're on a label, whether you're independent, or whatever the case may be. That's a huge important step in the process.
Well, I know so many churches are writing their own songs right now, producing their own records right now. So here's just that elevator pitch. Look, if you're looking for a producer, I can 100% vouch that Chris is the real deal. I've been in his studio.
Thank you,
not only is it the coolest vibe, but it smells really good. So,
oh, dude, thank you.
I remember walking in writing one time, and I was like, man, this smells like Starbucks mixed with like grandma's cookies. It was so good.
Come on.
But listen, man, like I just think you have such a heart for the church, and it really shows, not just in the way that you produce, but how you really pastor through producing. That's so cool, man.
Thank you, man.
Let's shift gears a little bit, because you mentioned this early on in your story. You do have a big family.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm often talking with pastors and worship leaders about is just the myth of balance, if I can call it that, because it is such a journey that we walk in with ministry and work and family, and every yes is a no to something else. But I think you do it so well. And obviously, like with your kids, kind of getting to that age where you're starting to see some of them leave the house and still have a passion for ministry and God. I think you're doing something right, so I would love to just glean from that wisdom just for a moment on talking about ministry and family and how you work all that, man.
Yeah. Man, that's something that Kara and I, we constantly are having conversations about, is there such thing as a balance? Because I feel like I've like really tried hard to do a balance. And man, there's times, I'll be honest, as whether it's on the production side or on the local church ministry side, I find myself beating myself up like I haven't done that well enough. But at the same time, like you said, the fruit is in what I see in my kids. That they're wanting to pursue different things in ministry, or it may not look like a local church thing, and that's fine. But their heart and their head is in the right place in terms of their devotion to the church. And so I think one thing that we've really kind of settled on, even especially in the last year or so, is just, man, for us, it's been including our kids in the ministry and in serving, like making sure that they have a place here at Gateway specifically where they can actually jump in and feel like they're valued in serving. And so like for my oldest son, Corbin, like, he's been our lighting director on a volunteer side for a few years now, which has really been awesome because A, he's serving in the local church, but B, it's helped him find his passion that he's pursuing now on the road and wanting to do long term. So, for him, it's that. For my other sons, they love serving in kids ministry, whether it's in the production side over there or teaching a class or being, one of them does a camera on Sunday mornings, which I feel like camera position in production it can be the easiest position for students to like serve in, because it's while it's a kind of an important position, it's a very low pressure position because it's a very easily trainable position from just a nuts and bolts side of ministry. And so like I have 3 or 4 different students from our student ministry on our camera ops crew here at Gateway, and it's been fun to watch them kind of embrace that and get into that on it. So for us, again, I think finding them a place where they can serve consistently and see that they are valued. Like if they miss, that they're going to be missed on a serve team side of things, because that's ultimately what's going to keep them in the church well past their teenage years. We've heard the stat that, that those that leave once they graduate high school, the stat of the percentage plummets a little bit of kids who stay in church. And I really think part of that is they haven't found their value with inside the four walls of the local church. And so seeing if they can find value in serving and as a contributing quote unquote member, of the church, then man, they're going to stay. They're going to stay because they feel value. They want to be there. And so we're navigating that right now as someone who has, almost 2 college age kids, of how they're going to navigate their next steps as far as church, whether they stay here at Gateway, whether they go find their own thing. Like, we're supportive of that. We want them to find a place that they feel valued serving and being a part of the local body.
That's so good, man. Yeah, just the other day, we had one of our leadership nights here at Destination Church, and I'm sitting at the table with the production team, and like 8 out of 10 are teenagers. And I loved it, man, because I do think that there's such a huge value in just getting involvement. And, my daughter on our way to school today, she was like, Dad, I don't really like being at home, but I just want to be at church all the time. And I was like, well, let's talk about the home thing. Cause we have a pretty good home. But she just loves church. She loves to be at church, and she's 10 years old, and she's serving with our kids team. And she's actually going to come with me tonight to our leadership night. But
so good. I
think you do that so well, man. And when you can model that and when you can invite into that, I heard John Mark Comer once say that as a pastor, my 2 main jobs are example and invitation. To live a life of example and to always be inviting people into that. And you do that so well, man. Well, listen, we got just a few moments left in this podcast. I feel like it's like drinking from a fire hose, man. Like, there are so many nuggets in this thing. And I know it's going to be such an encouragement to people, because we do have, worship leaders and worship teams, musicians, artists, and people from all walks of life listening to this. And I think the songwriting, the producing, all of that has been so helpful. But I mean, first and foremost, I know you as a worship leader, man. And so I would love to just hear, like, man, what's one of those lessons that you've learned along the way, maybe the easy way, maybe the hard way, that you're taking forward with you and that you're passing it on when it comes to leading worship?
Yeah. Well, I think this, whether it's worship leading, this is or the songwriting and production, really just in life, period. I think the biggest lesson that I'm learning, because I won't say I've learned it yet, is that just the idea of contentment in ministry. As creatives, again, this goes back to the insecurity thing that we talked about a little bit, and this is nothing new under the sun for creatives, but just the comparison thing has been such a prevalent thing that I won't say I've struggled with it, but it's just a thing that's always that's kind of looming in my mind a little bit. And it honestly, that kind of a couple of years ago, I just kind of had this kind of come to Jesus moment with it. Because like I said, it's never been like debilitating or controlling, but it's always been there. And I think as creatives, it's always there, especially with social media and the glimpse into everybody's lives, it's easy to do that. When you see everybody's highlight reel, you don't understand. There's also a behind the scenes reel that no one else sees, So good. But what I'm getting at is, a couple of years ago, I kind of went through this thought process of, I'm getting to do what I've wanted to do from a worship leading side, production, songwriting, since I was in 10th grade. And I used to dream about this town called Franklin, Tennessee, where all this magic was happening with music making and Christian music. And I just thought, back then I was like, man, what would it be like to actually work there one day and be a part of that community? And then fast forward, decades later, and here I am sitting in my studio right now in Franklin, Tennessee, talking to you at a studio that I get to make music at every day, at a church that I get to lead worship in every weekend. And so, the comparison of going, I just want the bigger and better song, I want the bigger and better record. I'd love to. What would it be like to lead at a bigger and better church? Those are all bigger and betters. Is just a false thing. It's like for me, it's like, man, how I kind of resolved, no, I'm just going to put my head down, do the best work I know to do, whether on the local ministry side, write the best songs I know how to today, produce the best the records I know how to produce today. And if God breathes on that anywhere else and takes me anywhere else, then that's gravy, because I'm getting to do what I've wanted to do since I was in 10th grade, and what God had called me to do, and the passion he's putting me with, the tools and gifts he's given me. So why am I insecure? Why am I complaining? Why am I trying to level up? Now I will say this, like, I always think there's goals that people can have to do better things, to be better at what you want to do. There's nothing wrong with striving to be better at something you want to do at, and to growing your craft. But I mean, Paul writes in Colossians 3 that we are to work heartily unto the Lord and not unto man. And one day I looked that up, and the word heartily really translates to this idea of a great degree, of someone that does it with enthusiasm, someone who does it with passion. And that's kind of what I want to be known as, is that no matter what God chooses to put in my path, whether it's a songwriting session, a record, or a worship leading opportunity, I want to work heartily unto the Lord, and make it the best I can be, whether it ministers to 100 people or 100,000 people. And it's a daily struggle, because that's a hard thing, especially living in a town like Nashville and being on Instagram and Facebook, when you see people that you admire doing things you wish you could do. But sometimes you got to remember there's people behind you going, man, if I could aspire to be like Kurtis one day, or I could aspire to be like Chris one day. And that's back to that Paul-Timothy relationship. I want to find those guys that I can help, those guys and gals that I could help do that one day, because it was a huge moment in my life when someone stepped into that and helped me understand that.
Well, you're the third or fourth person this week I've heard talk about comparison and contentment. So I'm going to go ahead and say that's a word from the Holy Spirit.
I think so, bro.
Dude, and it's so true, because I think everybody, it doesn't matter what level you get to. I mean, I was watching this documentary about Michael Jordan. It's like, if you think about like the pinnacle of sports success, and yet he was never content. He was never fully satisfied. There was always that drive. And I think we can have a holy ambition, right? We can have a drive to advance the kingdom and want to do everything that God has for us, but there can also be an unhealthy, always comparing, always wanting more for the sake of, just wanting more and not wanting more of God. And I think that's the thing, is like, do you want things over God? Do you want success over faithfulness? And man, I just think that is such a word from the Holy Spirit, because I'll be honest, I just got back from a conference in Houston, and that was like a common theme of every speaker, was this comparison thing. And I think as social media gets more and more complicated, it's not going away. And so we have to be intentional about choosing contentment over comparison, man. That's such a good word, Chris. Dude, any closing thoughts, man?
Yeah, I would just say plant deep roots and love on the people that's in front of you. The Lord may call you somewhere else a year or 5 years from now, but where you're at, give it your all. Again, the whole idea of working to the Lord, love on the people, and ministry, especially in worship. It's cliche, but I'm learning it all the time. It's more than just the songs that we lead on a Sunday morning. It's the lives that are transformed by the conversations, and by the community, and by the service that we have to people. So just love on the things and the people and the families that are in front of you, and do it as best you can until the Lord calls you differently.
Man, Chris, I appreciate your heart, appreciate your voice. Thanks so much for spending time with us on Worshipology.
Absolutely.
We're going to put contact info and some stuff that you can connect with Chris on. If you're interested in production or worship or songwriting, you need to get in touch with this dude. He's the real deal. Chris, love you, man.
Love you too, Kurtis. Thanks for having me on.
You've been listening to Worshipology with Kurtis Parks. To learn more and to find resources for worship leaders and teams, you can visit kurtisparks.com.